Hello and welcome to this lunchtime live. I'm just going to wait a few seconds for it to start streaming. Okay, looks like it's heading up there now. Hi everybody, welcome to this lunchtime live. My name is Laura Tilt and I'm the dietitian at Field Doctor. And today's live is all about eating for heart health. So February is Heart Month, and this is really an opportunity to raise awareness around heart diseases, heart health, and how we can take care of ours. So that's going to be our topic for today. We're also going to be joined by Heart Research UK. So they're going to be talking to us about what they do, and also we're going to be introducing or telling you a little bit more about our new partnership with them as well. So I can see that they've joined, hopefully. They are going to join us if they can. Amy's going to be joining us, so if you could request to join the live, that would be fantastic. So just to give you a little bit of information about Heart Research UK. So they fund life-saving medical research into heart health and work with people across the UK to support them to keep their heart healthy. Now, the sad statistic is that every 5 minutes someone dies from heart diseases in the UK. So it's really likely that every one of us is going to be touched by heart disease in some way, whether that's ourselves or somebody we know or love or care about. And that's why we're here to talk about it today. So I'm just going to see. Of wondering whether the tech's going to work out. So I'm just going to wait for Amy to join and then we will get started. And if anyone has any questions about heart health as we're going through, please feel free to put them in the comments. Right. Hi, Amy.
Hi.
Thanks so much for joining us. How are you?
Good, yeah. Thanks for having us. How are you?
Yeah, good. So it'd be really great to hear a little bit more about Heart Research UK and what you do there. So if you want to start off by telling us that would be fab.
Yeah, so we're a national charity. Our mission is to prevent, treat and cure heart disease. And we aim to do that through research, education and community support. And we'll keep doing that. Our mission is sort of until there are no more deaths from heart diseases. So when we're talking about heart diseases, we're talking about all the different heart diseases that that exist, but we're going to focus today more on the prevention of coronary heart disease. So
yeah,
just to sort of make that distinction, we talk about heart diseases, but when we're talking today about heart disease, we're specifically talking about coronary heart disease. So yeah, I sit in the health promotion and education team here at Heart Research UK. And since joining, I've worked on many of different health promotion programs that we run. Right now, I run our Healthy Hearts at Work program, which is all about working with organisations to try and improve the heart health of their employees. But yeah, that's a bit about us anyway, and sort of what I do here at the charity. And
fantastic.
I think, go on, sorry.
No, I was going to say, so and yeah, tell us, we'll talk a bit more about the partnership, but maybe you could tell us kind of what inspired the partnership between Heart Research and Field Doctor.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're keen to partner with, we're always keen to partner with companies, organisations that sort of have shared values with us. And specifically, we were looking to partner with a company that promotes healthy eating. And we came across Field Doctor, and Field Doctor stood out for us because I know that you've collaborated with other sort of medical health related charities in the past, and we just got the feel that Field Doctor, we're an organisation that we're really keen on improving people's health. So we thought it'd make a real strong partnership, really. And there's heart disease is a huge problem, and it's an important thing to talk about and educate the public about, and we thought that there would be a sort of shared opportunity there to do that. And that's sort of where the Field Doctor partnership came from.
Yeah. And can you tell us, so I did sort of mention it just as you were joining some of the statistics, but maybe you can go over them just again for us, just to remind us,
Yeah.
because like they are really shocking when you sort of see it written or hear it.
They are, and I think, you know, I think when we're thinking about death and disease, it's not often one that sort of springs to mind.
Yeah.
Maybe one that hasn't had as much publicity. So yeah, that's something we're really keen about, is like spreading that message and making people more aware of the symptoms and things. But just to sort of put it into perspective, so every 5 minutes in the UK, somebody dies from heart diseases.
Yeah.
So all the different ones. And coronary heart disease specifically is one of the biggest killers in the UK. And some statistics that I like to use, which I think just really help put it into perspective, is so coronary heart disease kills twice as many women as breast cancer. And I think that's sort of a big one that we think about when we think about women. And nearly 4 times as many men as prostate cancer. And again, I think that's one that we often think about when, you know, we're thinking about men. And yeah, so I think those two just sort of put it into perspective, that it is a huge problem. And I think this, you know, one of the saddest things about it really is that largely coronary heart disease is preventable. So that's, you know, something I'm really passionate about, being part of the health promotion team, is that sort of educating people around what they can do to prevent it before it takes hold.
Yeah, so that does sound really frightening, but I think the important thing, as you said, is that I think it's been estimated that something like 75 to 80% of coronary heart disease is preventable through what we call, you know, lifestyle change. So broadly, being active, eating a healthy diet, and stopping smoking. And it's all about kind of lifetime exposure. So it's important to start as early as we can with these things, but we can also benefit at any time. So with that in mind, should we chat about sort of why diet matters for heart health? So maybe I'll do sort of maybe I'll explain a little bit more about why diet is important for health. So we talked about the fact that, you know, we're all going to be, as it stands, all of us will be impacted by heart diseases, whether it's personally ourselves or somebody that we know, and that's why we're talking about it. But one of the main things that we can do is think about, you know, eating a healthy diet. And the reason that diet impacts our heart health is because it affects some of the risk factors. So what we eat on an ongoing basis impacts our cholesterol levels, impacts our blood pressure, and impacts our body weight. Now, if we have high levels of cholesterol, blood pressure, or if we're carrying kind of excess fat, particularly around our tummies, that can increase our risk of going on to develop heart disease. So when we're talking about changing our diet, it's so that we have an influence on those things, which in turn reduces our risk. And when I was doing a bit of research, it's estimated that diets are thought to be related to about 2/3 of heart disease in the UK. So again, that's like just such a huge amount. So yeah, so that's why we're talking about diet. So maybe Amy, you can talk us through kind of the big, I think there's 4 or 5 things that we can think about doing when it comes to changing our diet to be more heart healthy. So maybe you can talk us through those things, and I can maybe give some tips or some on how we can achieve them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up actually that it can be a little bit scary and a bit daunting, you know, hearing the statistics. But I think the fact that we do have so much power over what, you know, that to an extent over what we eat and the choices we make, I think that should really empower people to know that they do have a bit of power to take back, really, I guess. So yeah, when talking specifically about a heart healthy diet, the sort of 4 key things really that I like to talk about. But before we go into those, my approach to nutrition always is to think about what we can add in first, rather than sort of vilifying foods and saying you need to stop eating all these different things. So I think that's a really nice place to start. Focus on just adding the extra healthy things into a diet that you've already got. So those are the things that I'm going to cover first. There's 2 sort of big ones that we can easily start adding more in. So yeah, I think food should be fun, shouldn't it? And we should enjoy eating and not be like anxious around the choices that we make and things. So by adding things in and just focusing on that, it can be a bit more positive, I think. So one of the biggest things is fibre. So research shows that eating a diet rich in fibre can protect against heart diseases. It can help keep our cholesterol levels healthy. and we can get fibre from a variety of different sources, but mainly, well, from plant foods. So fresh fruits and vegetables, beans, lentils, and any whole grain foods. So thinking about whole grain brown rice, brown bread, that kind of thing. Now, recommendation is for adults to eat 30 grams a day, but we know that not many of us are achieving that. So I think at the moment, average is achieving around about 20 grams a day. So we're still sort of a third off getting towards that goal level. But yeah, there's I know you wanted to cover it. I don't know if you want to cover a little.
Yeah.
I've got ideas with some ideas on what we can do to increase our fibre intake.
Yes, it's just to say, like 91% of people, according to dietary surveys, aren't eating 30 grams. So most of us do need to be eating more. But I think the problem with dietary guidelines is that they don't really make a lot of sense to people that aren't nutrition professionals.
Right.
So when we say 30 grams, a lot of people might have heard of that number but not know what it means. So just to put it in some context for you, this is based on some work that was done by the British Nutrition Foundation. So their kind of research showed that in order to get 30 grams a day, you'd need to have between 5 and 8 servings of fruits and vegetables. You'd need to have whole grains with 2 of your 3 meals. So that could be, say, like porridge oats at breakfast and wholemeal bread at lunch in a sandwich, or wholemeal bread at lunchtime and wholemeal pasta with your bolognese, for example, and that you would regularly have throughout the week nuts and seeds, pats and snacks, and that you would include things like pulses in some of your meals. So it's definitely possible to get 30 grams, but you sort of do need to think at every meal sort of, where's my fibre coming from? So I always like to say start from the top down. So focus on your breakfast, make a change there, and kind of then layer on like a change to snacks in the rest of the day. So when you're having your starchy carbohydrates, so bread, cereal, rice and pasta, switching, as you said, to the whole grain one. So porridge oats, cereals that contain the whole grain. So a good tip for looking at fibre is if you check the back of the pack per 100 grams, if a food's got at least 6 grams of fibre, it's a high fibre food. Changing your breads from white to wholemeal, or another tip is to choose like a seedy one. So I know some people don't maybe like the flavour, or it's quite a big change to go to wholemeal, but you can also get the half and half breads, or seedy breads tend to contain some as much as kind of like 3 or 4 grams a slice, so they're quite a good one as well. Lots of fruits and vegetables. Pulses are like definitely the secret weapon with fibre. So one of the things that I like to do is that if you're making a bolognese, do half mince and half like canned green lentils. So they're already cooked, you just pop them in when you put your tomatoes in. That's like a really good fibre booster. So I don't know if you've got any other top tips.
No, that's one of mine as well, with the beans and lentils, adding them. So whatever dish you already make. So if you already make a chili, add in some black beans, maybe kidney beans as well. They go really well. And then, like you said, if your favourite meal, bolognese, even shepherd's pie, anything like that, you can just sub, like you said, half the mince for the lentils, which is a really good tip. I like your approach of starting from the top down. So thinking about breakfast first, and nuts and seeds on your regular breakfast cereal, things like that. Seed mix. You can get fabulous seed mixes now in like the supermarket that contain lots of different ones. And then I think as well, sometimes when I'm talking to people about what they can do to add more fibre in, it can be something as simple as just whatever you're eating, just add in an extra vegetable. So even if that, vegetable doesn't actually sit as part of the meal almost, just cook a little bit of extra broccoli and have it before you actually eat your meal. And there's some interesting research as well that helps with eating fibre-rich foods before you sort of eat your main meal, that helps with like blood sugar balance and things, which we know that impacts heart health as well. So just trying to consume more variety of plants. And like you say, it is quite hard to hit that 30 gram if you're not conscious of it. So at every meal, every snack, just be thinking about, do I have a source of fibre here?
And we're going to talk about some of the meals that kind of you curated for the heart healthy range, but all of those are at least a source of fibre, and some of our meals have got like 10 grams of fibre in, which is like a third of your daily intake. So that would be a really good, kind of gives you a really good head start. Okay, so what's your second big thing that we can focus on?
Yeah, so again, continuing with the theme of adding things in, so heart healthy fats. So I think when we think about fats, we often think, oh, we shouldn't be eating them, they're not healthy, but there are actually benefits to eating heart healthy fats. So omega-3, for example, is a fatty acid that helps protect against heart disease. We can find that in oily fish, things like nuts, seeds, flaxseed, olives, olive oil, and avocados, that type of thing, that have healthy fats in, and they can be really supportive for keeping our cholesterol levels in check, so making sure that we don't have too much of that what we sort of term the bad cholesterol, and increasing the good cholesterol, and they can really help as well, like help us feel full and things. So it is important to be adding those into our meals. So that would be the next thing that I'd mention. So I don't know if you want to go on to any tips that you've got about how we can get those in.
Yeah, I think if you are someone that eats fish and is happy to eat fish, like making sure you have at least one portion of oily fish a week, or oily or fatty fish. So that's things like mackerel, salmon, herring. Always forget them when I'm asked, but I think that's yeah. And they're a really good source of what we call these long chain fatty acids, which are kind of our bodies don't make them, so we have to get them from our diet. So eating 1 to 2 portions of oily fish a week is brilliant for kind of making sure we meet that requirement. And if you're sort of no one else eats fish in your family, or you're basically choosing tinned fish is another kind of really good way to get that fish in, and then you can use it in sort of lunch boxes. So I really like using sort of canned mackerel. It's also it's a lot more kind of budget friendly as well than maybe having fresh fish, and it can just kind of sit in the pantry until you're ready to use it. And as you said, again, so you picked the first one, like seeds are a really good source of kind of fiber, but they're also a source of these sort of heart healthy fats as well. So one thing is sort of working in both ways, which is great. And maybe thinking about, sometimes replacing like butter on toast with like drizzle of olive oil. So the breakfast that I really like is toast with olive oil and sliced tomatoes.
Delicious.
That's like a Spanish inspired breakfast. So thinking about maybe just those small changes, or using avocado in your sandwiches, those types of things.
Yeah, we've got a really nice recipe actually on our website for anybody that's not a fan of fish, or the thought of eating salmon maybe sounds a little bit too much. We do have a nice recipe for salmon nuggets, which are a nice way to start, and particularly good for children as well, if children are a bit funny about eating salmon. So they work with my children, so that's
mine as well. Okay, so what's your third tip?
Yes, so next ones, we're sort of going to start thinking about what we should be avoiding.
Okay.
So the first one I'll talk about is salt. So I think most people are aware now that eating too much salt can have a negative impact. So particular sodium can have a negative impact on our blood pressure.
Okay.
We do need some, but I think the real problem comes really from us eating too much processed foods, which are often high in salt. So trying to cook more from scratch is really the way to go when we're thinking about salt intake, really. And I know a lot of people don't enjoy cooking, but when you do get sort of into cooking, you can start experimenting with lots of different other options. So herbs and spices are a fantastic way of adding depth of flavour, and we don't often need the salt. But salt does preserve food, so that's why we find it in high levels in most, ready meals. But again, that's one of the reasons why we were drawn to Field Doctor, because I know you guys are one of the few that don't have really high salt levels. So yeah, that would be the next one that I'd say just to be aware of. And I don't know if you've got any extra tips there that you want to add about avoiding it.
Yeah, as you said, like I know our expert chef Matt's a really big fan of using lots and lots of fresh herbs, like in your cooking, sort of not just a little bit, like a big bunch, and lots of different types as well, to add lots of flavour, using like citrus, and he makes a lot of dressings with olive oil and citrus as well to give lots of kind of flavour. I guess my sort of tip would be is that the high salt things are often things that you don't think taste salty. So maybe in things like breakfast cereal and bread, they can contain quite high levels of salt. So even actually when you're in the supermarket, if you are buying, for example, bread, like flipping over the pack and having a look again at the per 100 grams, it's quite easy to compare. Maybe just making a switch, something would be lower. And if you're having a couple of slices of that every day, it could make quite a big difference. And the other thing I was going to say about salt is I think the research shows that our taste buds can adjust. So sometimes if you are used to having more salt and then you have a meal with less salt, it can feel a little bit jarring because it feels like you're not, you know, the taste has totally changed. But actually I think, I'm trying to remember the research that I read, I think it's around sort of 2-3 weeks, like your taste buds can adjust. So cutting down slowly, or just knowing that even if you have made a change and things aren't kind of tasting quite the same, you can use those extra tips, as we're saying, using like citrus and different dressings and lots of herbs to flavour your food, but also knowing that your taste buds will adjust in time as well.
Yeah, and I think that's true of adding in extra, like if somebody's not a fan of fruit and vegetables, and you know, the more we eat, the more we find ourselves actually wanting to eat them. So yeah, definitely don't be put off if you're at the start of your sort of heart health journey, adding in more fibre, taking away the salt, like you know, you said, don't be put off there. Stick through the like first couple of weeks, and then you'll actually find yourself thinking, oh, I could just eat some cauliflower or something, and it actually becomes tastier and more fun, doesn't it? Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, and was it one more tip you had?
Yeah, so then the next one I'm going to talk about, we've probably all heard about it in relation to heart health, is saturated fat.
Okay.
So I mentioned earlier that there are types of, you know, unsaturated fat, which are supportive of heart health, but then saturated fat is the one that we just need to be mindful of, really. And I mean, the good news is that it mostly crops up in the foods that we already know that are unhealthy. So most people are probably already aware that the cakes, the biscuits, the pastries, the generally the processed foods, and then also just be mindful of what is found in animal products as well. So maybe swapping if you're eating a lot of red meat, then swapping that to a lean protein source, like more fish, like we've already mentioned, chicken, turkey, that kind of thing. And just being mindful of the amount of fat, like saturated fat, we're consuming from dairy products as well. Again, so just if there's any, you know, lower fat options you can pick, but just be mindful of sugar content, because sometimes sugar's snuck in when fat's removed. But it's quite easy nowadays to sort of have a look at, I know looking at like the back of foods and labels and things can sometimes be a bit daunting, and I often get people telling me that, you know, I don't understand what's on the back of a food packet, but just look for that traffic light system, and it does make it a little bit easy, you know, to try and aim for those greens and those ambers and avoid the reds where possible. And yeah, I think well, with saturated fat, again, I think the more that we add in the good foods, and same with the salt, like the more we fill our diet with an abundance of the fruits and vegetables, and adding in those plant sources of protein like beans that we've already mentioned, the less that other stuff is going to be present in our diet, because we're just going to sort of flood it with the good stuff. So I don't know if you've got any extra tips about saturated fat.
Yeah, I think what you said is brilliant. I think when we're checking labels can be really confusing. I think where people get most confused is where there's like multiple colours on a label, because one thing seems good, but then they're like, oh, this bit's good, but this bit's not so good. But I guess obviously in relation to saturated fat, so if it's low in saturated fat, it's got less than 1.5 grams per 100 grams. So that would get somebody like a green on the front. So if you're particularly looking for that on the label. But I totally agree. I mean, if we're sort of thinking about, okay, we've talked about adding more fruits and vegetables. So maybe as a snack, you're having sort of fruit and nuts instead of maybe like a biscuit that you might normally have. If at dinners you're thinking, okay, well, I'm going to sort of have just half the amount of meat and add the pulse or like the beans or the lentils instead. Just by doing that, you've actually reduced the amount of saturated fat by adding more of the beneficial foods to your diet. So I think just by making some of those swaps anyway, somebody will naturally reduce the amount of saturated fat that they're eating. And then it's such a hard word, isn't it? Moderating your intake. What does that actually mean? But with dairy foods, as you said, kind of like choosing those lower fat options, so having like a semi-skimmed milk and switching from like a whole to a semi-skimmed, and choosing maybe your lower fat cheeses as well. You've got lots of resources on your website, don't you? I don't know if you have any sort of lists that people can go and download, like fact sheets to give them a hand with this type of thing.
Yeah, we do. We've got we publish a healthy tip specifically related to heart health every 2 weeks, and you can sign up for that on our website if you want to.
Okay.
That, there's lots of information already on there. And I mentioned the recipes. We do have the recipes, so if you've got a favourite that is not particularly healthy, then maybe go see if we've got a healthier version of that. But I think as well, it's important to remember that when we're talking about diet, we're not sort of, it's not about that one food or that one time that you eat that food. You mentioned this at the beginning. It's about what we eat on the whole. So the style of diet that we eat, and I think it's important when we're talking about food to not really vilify any particular food, and just try and encourage to eat an abundance of different plant foods. Basically, that's sort of the bottom line, isn't it? The more we eat the plant foods, the less we eat of the unhealthy foods. And there is certain diets that are shown to be protective, so like the Mediterranean diet particularly, which is rich in fish and whole grains, lots of beans, is protective of heart health. And I think one final thing I'd like to say on diet is, if you're going to take away anything, we've already mentioned them, but if you're going to take away just one thing from this live today, is eat more beans. Lots of research showing that beans are sort of the key, really, beans and lentils. And I don't know, some of the people who watch this, and I know yourself will be familiar, with the blue zones, and where we see people living longer with less instance of diseases. That's what the blue zones are, sort of different areas around the world that, like I say, we see people living longer and disease free. And one of the things that crops up all the sort of consistency across those is beans. So if there's one thing, like I say, to take away, just try and add more beans into your diet where possible.
Well, they say, isn't it, beans good for your heart? We won't repeat the rest of the... No. But on that point, because we do talk a lot about gut health within Field Doctor, and sort of one of the, I guess, side effects of eating more beans is that you can get more gas production. So but for also, there's some quite interesting research on this, is that also, as your gut microbes adjust to having more of this sort of fermentable fibre from beans, they get used to it. So you kind of might get an initial increase in sort of a bit more bloating, feeling a little bit more gassy, but that does tend to kind of settle. The exception might be people who have irritable bowel syndrome, who sometimes can experience kind of more difficult symptoms and more painful symptoms, and I would say for those people it's kind of still including it, but in more of a portion size that you can tolerate. So that would sort of just be something to be aware of. And as always,
small as well, even for the average person, if you're not used to eating that amount, like you say, just that small, because people can be put off, actually, can't they?
And that's the reason to go slow. So that's why I sort of say top down is kind of, it can be quite overwhelming to think about changing all your diet at once, but actually if you start from the top down, make a change to breakfast and then let that bed in for a week or so, and then make another change, and that's actually a great way to let your gut adjust to the increased fibre as well. Because if you go from sort of a really low fibre diet to a super high fibre diet, you might experience some discomfort and bloating as well. So give your tummy and your gut microbes time to adjust to the more nourishment that they're getting and things will settle down. Brilliant. Okay, so I guess we should talk. So with our partnership, you've actually gone and had a look at all of our meals and curated a selection of kind of your sort of heart healthy Field Doctor meals, and I think you've chosen 30. Is that right?
Yeah, it was hard to pick, to be honest, because Field Doctor in general, all the meals are very healthy. I know that's something that's very important to Field Doctor. So yeah, we've chosen 30. And the main things that we've looked at really were fibre. So as you mentioned, some of the meals have, really, really great levels of fibre. So we looked at fibre, and then obviously we've looked at salt, the things that we mentioned, really saturated fat and salt, sugar, that type of thing. So yeah, we've selected 30 of sort of our favourites or top ones that would be supportive of heart health.
And I've just got a list here which I'm going to read. So all of the meals that you've chosen are low in saturated fat, low in sugar. None of them contain high levels of salt. That's kind of across our whole range. So they're either kind of like in the medium or low category. All of the meals are at least a source of fibre. Some are high in fibre, and lots of them have got these heart healthy ingredients that we talked about today. So they've all got plenty of veggies in them, but we rely really heavily on pulses as well. So as well as kind of using whole grains like wholemeal pasta and brown rice, we also mix lots of kind of lentils and beans. So it's actually really, if you're not used to eating them, having them kind of mixed in with another grain like rice is actually a really nice way to introduce them. Salmon, extra virgin olive oil, olives, that type of thing. So, and also Field Doctor are going to be donating 10p from every meal that's sold to Heart Research UK to contribute to your important work.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you.
So if anybody wants to have a look at the meals, you just need to head to the Field Doctor website and go to the All Meals, shop All Meals, and then there's a purple tab which says Heart Healthy. And if you click on that one, it will bring up all of your curated selection. And if you're a new customer and you've not bought with us at all, you'll get 20% off your first 2 boxes. So that's fantastic. Hopefully some of your supporters will be able to sort of give us a go as well. But after this live, I will post up a link to the shop so it's easier to sort of navigate your way to that. Perfect. And if anyone wants to kind of find out more about what you do, sign up for your newsletter you said, or kind of access. I know you've got also I was giving it a go yesterday. You've got like a diet checklist on your website as well that someone can kind of go through, and it gives them a bit more kind of maybe like personalized tips on like the most important changes that they could make.
Yeah, definitely. Just head to our website. There's lots of information there. And like I say, get signed up for that healthy tip email. We only send it out once every 2 weeks, but we sort of try and make them really actionable. So rather than just telling you, we try to give you some really good ideas for how you can actually make that reality in your life, because a lot of the time we know what we should be doing, but it's about how we actually go about doing that. So we're quite big on trying to help you make the changes rather than just telling you what you should be doing,
which is a problem with a lot of I think dietary guidance, as we said, like telling someone to eat 30 grams of fiber or 400 grams of fruits and vegetables, but not really actually helping them understand exactly how to do that is often the bit that's missing. So that's really great if you're joining up the dots.
Trying to,
Well, thank you so much. It's like wonderful to have this partnership with you, and just really great to hear more about the important work that you're doing. And we will link over to the meals, and if anyone's got any questions about Field Doctor meals, you can contact us hello@fielddoctor.co.uk. One of our lovely team will get back to you. Okay, have a nice rest of your day, Amy. Take care.
Nice to meet you.
Bye bye.